In September of 2013, unprecedented rain flooded 6 different river corridors, causing destruction to homes, businesses, and more than 400 miles of Colorado highways. In 2022, the Colorado Department of Transportation finished the final permanent repair project from the floods. This is the story of building the road to resiliency. The job was clear: get the roads back open by Thanksgiving. But in many spots, there was no road. On US 34 east of Greeley, water destroyed an entire section of the road, leaving a giant hole.
You know, we had to build a causeway across this lake that had severed our roadway. We basically pulled all of the rubble and debris from Greeley, in the town of Greeley, all the buildings that were being torn down. I mean, we had truck after truck that we were putting in this hole to try to build a roadway on top of it to get the road back open again.
It was unreal at first, and then it was just, all right, let's do as much as we can, as fast as we can.
A little nerve-wracking, you know, a super rush, trying to mobilize to get enough people together to come out and start assessing how we were going to get the roads put back together.
There were a lot of bodies all ready to be all hands on deck. Where do you start? And I think Johnny Olson, who was the incident commander at the time, did a really fantastic job of, he is a visionary guy and he corralled troops really well. He gave everybody a vision and a goal and a mission.
While the roads were closed, the effect of not having access and the impact of all this loss was hitting a very personal note for many.
So it was not only 36, but 34. There's residents that live in the canyon. There's also vacation rentals, and then recreators were just cut off. They were stranded with no way out. So the only way out to get those people out were airlifts. And that's the one thing I was pretty shocked to hear, that the 2013 flood was the second largest air evacuation in the nation's history, second to Hurricane Katrina.
It was very surreal. I was emotionally drained doing those damage reports, just the destruction and seeing all the houses that people had lost, and their cars were taken by the river, and the metal was bent like it was paper. So just being around the destruction was pretty surreal. We were in those canyons without cell phone service, so it was an eerie mixture of peacefulness because there were no cars in the canyon, but it was definitely a time to bow down to Mother Nature and just appreciate what you do have, because it was a very surreal experience seeing all that destruction.
But leading up to that, there was a lot of pressure to get something out, and I think I had information overload, right? So I've seen all these pictures, had all these reports of different quantities that we were dealing with, roads, sections that were out, and I think you kind of lose sense of reality and what impact that actually has on people.
Just seeing, like, even the first day, seeing here on 144 when you've got a mile of roadway gone, and then you just keep going and there's chunks of roadway gone everywhere. And the water kept coming and it just kept going further east. I mean, the damage kept going to Sterling and Julesburg and even out of state. All that water comes down. It's very powerful. But roadways have nothing compared to personal damage. So when I was up on 34, yeah, we're rebuilding the roadway. People weren't allowed in right away. And going into that second week of rebuild, then people started coming to their homes. And they were pushing stuff out of their house, and it's covered with mud and silt. And that's when it got personal. That's when the impact hit, that this was more than just damage to a roadway.
It was a lot to take in. I think the one, and I'll still remember to this day, I was out with FHWA, and the guy who was out there was explaining to me, he's just like, now imagine all the kids that sat here on the edge fishing, and that would fish over the past 100 years that this bridge existed. And I was like, wow. Because I was just standing down in the stream looking up at everything. And so it was pretty unbelievable, but it was something I'll never forget.
I remember just really being taken back because I grew up in Colorado, more in the Colorado Springs area, but never experienced anything quite like that. And I didn't know what to think at that time of what that was going to look like, what the coming months were going to look like, what that recovery was going to be.
We called 3 contractors and said, bid this work. And then we also had some value propositions like, can you mobilize, by September 20th or whatever the date was. Like within a week, we wanted to mobilize. Can you commit to working 24/7 through November? And of course they all did, they all pitched in.
My role in those early days and leading into the early weeks, I lived out of that work truck for about the first 6 weeks of this disaster. And of course, the focus quickly became emergency repair. We are transitioning into an emergency repair phase.
I mean, we could have these big nationwide contractors come in, do 34 and 7, and then on 36, talk about being a public servant. And something to be proud of is to have, between National Guard reserves and our maintenance forces come in and do that.
While many were out at sites, assessing damage and working to get the roads back open, CDOT leadership set up an incident command center to handle all the information coming in and develop a plan of attack.
It was almost a controlled chaos in the ICC. So when you're dealing with, devastation from Region 4 all the way through Region 2, so Region 4, Region 1, and Region 2, and the amount of devastation that happened. And then the swath going from, the Continental Divide all the way out to the Eastern Plains, it was very stressful. We were working 20-hour days for probably the first 8 weeks. And it was a pressure cooker, right? Because a lot of this then becomes, not just making sure communities are safe and making sure that, our people understand what they're supposed to do, but it's how they're supposed to do it. And then from just an administration side, they needed it just to make sure that they were communicating to then the broader community of Colorado.
It was chaos. It was a lot of people trying to figure out, people wanted to know answers, right? Somehow we needed to put a scale to it.
I mean, it was complete mass chaos, everything coming in. I think, we had tables set up for different responsibilities. I was part of the cost estimating, one of the cost estimating tables.
And then CDOT went into high gear, getting people, contractors on board, and started getting roads open.
Everyone at CDOT got that it doesn't fix the road if you start panicking and going crazy. You have to be methodical, and that's what we tried to do.
Incident Command Center Operations Manager Keith Schaefer reached out to Stephen Humphrey to help in the ICC.
And he called me up, 4 or 5 days after the flood and said, hey, there's a lot happening. We need people, we need help. And even talked to my boss and said 4 weeks is all we're gonna need from Stephen. And 4 weeks is now 9 years or whatever. And obviously not the same level of effort it was in the beginning, but been kind of consistently helping with flood recovery efforts ever since.